Hey YouTube, welcome back to Universe X TCG or Uni X TCG. Today, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about a very hot topic in the One Piece card game community, and that will be Law. And we're going to go into a lot of things. What Law does, why he is so special, why he is so polarizing in terms of people feeling like he's the best deck in the format versus some people refusing to even play him. So we're going to get into all these topics. We're going to try to make this maybe a crisp 15, maybe 20-minute video. Yeah, that's pretty much that. We are getting into a very tight area for Treasure Cup being upon us. So we want to get into as many of these competitive topics as possible before we dive more into the coming of set 2. So yeah, I'm very excited. If you like the One Piece content, you can always help out the channel though by liking the video, commenting on the video, and just really going into the Discord, joining that, being a part of the Universe X community, and maybe even subscribing to the channel. Last thing I want to say is that tomorrow I will be streaming One Piece Odyssey at noon. We'll probably go for like 2 or 3 hours. It'll be a fun, grand old time. And so yeah, if you want to see some One Piece video gaming action, you can go over to my Twitch, which will be in the description. And past that, let's get into it. So, first thing we need to talk about is Law. All right, and the thing about Law is, for these, I'm just going to be holding up these cards. I can just basically talk about what they do. Law is a red-green dual color leader. That means he's going to start off with 4 life, because that's generally how they balance having 2 whole card pools to themselves. They start off with 4 life instead of the, sorry if this doesn't focus, instead of the normal 5 that most leaders start with. But his ability, that huge chunk of text, basically says that when you have all 5 of your character slots filled up, you can then pay 2 to bounce a red or green card and then replace it with a red or green card opposite of its color with a cost 5 or less. So that means you can play a red card, get its effect off, or actually more like play a green card, get its effect off, and then pay 2 if you have a total of 5 maximum characters, and bounce that green card for a red card with rush, or a red card you want to set up for next turn. There's a plethora of opportunities. So the first things you want to know about Law is that 1, he is a dual colored leader, which means, yes, it's not just 1 card pool, it is multiple card pools, it's 2, and that's going to make him incredibly powerful. He is a supernova captain. The theme is really going to ring true when we start going through the cards, but your strategy is going to be to fill up your board. And to do so, you're going to make sure that a lot of your cards are low cost. 1 cost and 2 costs are critical in this deck because you can't spend all of your Dawn to fill up your board and then not have any Dawn activate his effect. You need to be able to maintain a constant tempo of filling your board turn after turn in order to use his effects best. Now, we're going to go into all the cards that really make this deck what it is before we start talking about what may be holding this deck back. So the thing is here, the first and foremost part of it is that because of the nature of this deck, being able to spam out low cost cards and then swap them out eventually, you have access to 2 ridiculously good cards in either color, and those right here are Nami and Bonnie. Nami, I'm looking at the screen, I'm flip-flopped. Nami will come into play and she will give you all of, she'll let you search top 5 for a Straw Hat, while Bonnie is going to be able to be played for 1, tap for 1, and search your top 5 for a Supernova. Some of these have some overlap, because for the most part, this is searching all green, or all blue. Wow, I guess I can't talk, I'm so sorry. Searching all red cards, while this one is searching all green cards. But because Supernova Tag is not limited to green in this set, you can pick up Luffy's as well as Zoro's with Bonnie. So that's actually a really cool thing. Now, the other cool interactions with these is that since this is a come into play effect and this is a tap effect, once you are running at full steam, you'll be able to do plenty of combos to protect, because that is a thing. His effect, Law's effect, is going to act as a sword and a shield depending on the cards you use it. If you pay 1 to play this, and then 1 to tap it, search your top 5 for a Supernova, then your board is full, so you pay 2 to bounce this back and play this, and then search your top 5 for a Straw Hat. you are now no longer giving your opponent the opportunity to just swing on this tapped Bonnie. You have protected this Bonnie while gaining an incredible amount of momentum. Something that's small when it comes to incremental advantage is that a lot of decks in this game do not plus. Like, there are small pluses, like Queen is a +1. I mean, technically you can call it a +2 because you're getting a body and you're going up one card in hand. Actually, no. It's a break even technically, but you're getting a body. You're playing a card, so you're going down on one card. You are drawing 2, and that looks like you're going up, but then you're trashing 1. So yeah, you're essentially at a break even, but you gain the body, so that can be seen as a plus. When you start using Law's effect to its maximum potential, you are actually just going plus. When you play this card from hand, you are currently at a -1. You use this effect, you are currently at a break even. You've used this card, you've gained a card in your hand in terms of hand advantage. When you activate his ability and you add this back, and then you play this, you're still at a break even. But then you search a card from this, and it becomes a +1 interaction altogether. So you are starting to really build the hand size when you get going. And that is actually really cool. So between every single card in this deck pretty much being a Supernova or a Straw Hat, these 2 cards will give you incredible range on putting your hands together. Now, going into the next part about Law. Looking to play a bunch of cheap cards, but also looking to protect your life total, takes advantage of the fact that you have up to 8 1-drop blockers to be used in the deck. One of them being picked up by Bonnie as a Supernova, and the other one being picked up by Nami as a Straw Hat. So these cards are integral. They do so many things. 1, they cost 1, so they're easy to drop and they're Dawn effective. 2, Dawn efficient, I guess. 2, they can be searched and they're easy defense. So they're protecting your measly 4 life, which is a very important thing for Law that we're going to get into later. They can easily fill up your board while making defense, so they're not just like, oh, I played it for 1 just so I can fill my board. No, they're serving multiple purposes. They're easily searchable, and they're going to get you closer to not only stabilizing, but filling up your board with your effect. So that's a huge, huge, huge factor. Now, when it comes to the splitting of the effects, what you're going to notice is a lot of the time, the green pieces you pick up are utility, and the red pieces you pick up are power. So like when we come into the green pieces, we're going to talk about some cheap options that do a lot of things. 1, you got Nekamamushi. Nekamamushi is a very, very good card because 1, he costs 2. You're always going to want to look at these 2 drops and evaluate them at a certain level because they're easy to play. And their effects eventually, come into play effects are going to come into play, no pun intended, a lot when you start flipping these cards on and off the board. So playing this card, right, is going to be able to tap something. You may think that that's like small, but this could be tapping a blocker when you need to go in. This could be tapping a card in your opponent's side of the field that you know is going to swing at you next turn, like a Robin or an Okiku, which we're going to get into later. And then you can swing on it with your leader, dawn up your leader, swing it in. This also is going to provide yet another body so that you can start switching things. And if this survives to the point where you can start playing your 5-drop Laws or your Law effect, you're going to be able to bring it back to hand and then play it whenever you want to tap a valid card again. Meanwhile, a card like this, if your opponent has already swung at you once with a 3 cost or less, and there's a lot of those, Robins, Okikus, Zoros, plenty of them, this card will get in there and just blow it up. There are also times where late game, these can be used in tandem. Oh, they've got something that they just played and you don't want to swing it next turn. Nekamamushi it, attempt to swing on it, let them drop a 1k or a 2k to stop you from killing their threat. Bang, use your leader ability, or use your leader ability to bounce a red card, and then you play this, and you just pop it, and oops. Like, now they've wasted a card and they still lost the card. So you can see how these utility cards are here. Popping a 3 or less that's rested, cost 3 or less that's rested, or just tapping something with cost 3 or less down. Now, when you go over to your red, you're going to be seeing more of that power. You got Zoro, who's going to be able to come down and rush, but you've also got Luffy, who's going to be able to come down and rush. And this card was already a card that was good enough when it was played for 5. Sometimes essentially 7 when you want to put 2 Dawn under it. But when you're playing it for 2, that's just insane. It literally is just insane when you're playing it for 2 off of your leader ability. It becomes incredibly, not even Dawn efficient, it becomes like almost borderline broken when you're playing it for 2. So you're starting to see so many lines of play, and you're also starting to see like different combos that can line up. Like the sheer amount of terror when your opponent plays something that they want to keep alive for next turn. So they play it and they're like, okay, this has to survive. And you hit them with a tap 2 Nekomamushi, tap it. Tap 2 with for your leader effect, bounce it back to hand, play a Zoro, dawn it up, swing on it. And then the thing you thought was safe, and you thought it really was, I mean, you shouldn't have against law, but is no longer safe. So you start really playing these cards in tandem, and it becomes ridiculously strong. Now, where we kick this into overdrive is when you start having Law's effect with Law's effect. So this guy bounces any character you have from your board to your hand to play a 3 cost or less. No color restriction, just a cost restriction. So Law, since he's able to bounce something for a 5 or less, you start, or putting in something to play with 5 or less, you start making some absolutely dumb plays. Once again, this guy and Luffy are the dumbest cards you can play off of 2 because they just like start going into realms of almost broken. When you literally imagine, right, paying 1 for something like this, your 5th card on your character board, then tapping 2 to put this back in your hand to then play this, okay? And then this guy, maybe you just swung with something, right? And he puts that back into your hand to then play this, and then this goes sideways. That is just insane. You just plussed a card, and it is truly a plus because you put the Nami back in your hand. You are then going to play a blocker who is then going to put something you already swung with, putting it out of harm's reach. And then you're playing a rusher to swing. This is where these cards get nasty. You start really flipping these on and off the board, and your opponent can get overwhelmed by your sheer advantage. If you can protect these cards for even, like, if these guys make it, or you see them after your leader skills online, you're going to start gaining 2 to 3 cards per turn, and that's going to lead you to have a whole bunch of counter power, as well as finding your blockers, as well as finding your utility pieces, as well as finding your power pieces, and then you're just able to also make very large blockers that can recycle pieces. Combined with the fact that you do gain access to cards like this, Gum Gum Jet Pistol, blowing up something with 60 power or less, you're really going to be able to flourish in terms of destruction and removal, tapping things, swinging them. That's crazy. Moving past that, you also have to understand that this deck has access to like a plethora, like because it's a dual color, you have those 2 bases of 2Ks. So just like the Blurple decks, the green-red decks have the ability to play a crazy amount of 2Ks. So the counter power is going to be there if you build the deck right. Now, even past that, because you have 2 whole card pools and you have a leader that's very, very good at doing what it does, you have a number of cards that you can tech in. Some people say it's useful, some people say it's not. Like for instance, you can really run things like Robin, because Robin will be able to tear through your opponent's board without having to, without having to actually connect with them. And on top of having Robin be able to do that, if you are playing Robin, there's a lot of ways you can protect her. Normally Robin gets 1 good swing in and you have to work to protect her. In this deck, you can swing with Robin, use an effect like Law to bounce Robin to play your 5-drop Law. Use 5-drop Law's effect to bounce something you don't want to get swung on, and then play Robin again untapped so that next turn she's ready to go again. There's a lot of good ways you can juggle this on and off the field to protect her. Now, moving into another thing, some people even opt to play the Wano package. And the Wano package is incredible because, like, 1, you start running Momonosuke. Momonosuke will be able to search out cards like Nekomamushi. That's pretty cool. Not really much else. It depends on if you're going to tech weird cards. Like, I say weird, I like them, but I don't really like them in Law. Weird cards like Paradise Waterfall, things like that. But if you do run Momonosuke, you have 1 more searcher that you can get on and off the field, 1 more 1-drop. And the thing about Momonosuke is these cards are always looking at, so far, the tags that they're under, not the colors. There's not a green Land of Wano, it's a Land of Wano. This means that you can play cards like Otama and search for them using Momonosuke. And this is currently in most decks an unsearchable card because of color restriction. However, in Law, and I guess Luffy to that extent, you can search Otama using Momonosuke and then make your Jet Pistols and Robins even more ferocious if you have the space. Also, Izo is another 2K that you can search off Momonosuke, but also another come into play tapper. She comes in and she taps something with cost 4 or less. So you have a lot of combo play that you can do with this deck. And the craziest part about that is that because of these two constantly coming on and off the field, you are able to play different ratios than any deck is currently able to, simply because. Now, we are next going to go into the hated enemies of Law and why you may not see Law as prevalently as you thought you would looking at the Japanese meta. So, with all this being said, you may wonder, why isn't Law running every table at every event? You've seen it come away with some wins, but here's the thing. Law does need some big brain plays, but admittedly, as powerful as Law is, Law also needs you to be playing, or Law has some hoops to jump through that are admittedly sometimes out of your control. Public enemy number 1 is Kaido. Why? Because while Kaido is susceptible to the levels of aggression that Law can put out, Kaido is also home to the most consistent, and I don't mean consistent by deck, I mean just the sheer number of cards that literally pop cards. He's going to be able to tear apart your board regardless of how many things you have untapped. Sometimes you'll keep things untapped because you don't want to use them yet, and you have your blockers up. He will be able to punch straight through your blockers and blow up things that you wanted to keep untouched. And because of that, he's very strong. Not to mention, you only have 4 life, and so he just needs to hit you 3 times and then use his -7 effect and then just attempt to take your last life with one of those huge swingers. And that in itself is a massive, massive issue for Law. A Law seeing 2 or 3 Kaidos in an event can turn the Law's record into untoppable, and that is very, very scary. Public enemy number 1 in the Kaido deck is this bad boy right here. This guy comes into play for 7, Dawn -2, and then he's able to destroy 1 3-drop or less and 1 2-drop or less. And in Law's deck, that's mostly all you have until you start dropping Luffy's and Law's himself. So really, when this guy comes down, he's getting rid of half of your board, give or take. And you just desperately need to fill up that board. And every time your board goes down to 0 or 1, you're going to have to spend a significant amount of Dawn trying to build it back up to full and hope you have enough Dawn left over in order to do these things. And sometimes that can leave you vulnerable if your hand isn't good enough to make a massively, stocked board once you've already filled it back up. So that is a really, really rough dilemma. Kaido can always fall to its own inconsistencies, but when Kaido curves out, normally it's almost unbeatable. There are very few times where Kaido can just draw optimally and another deck doesn't feel like they're getting thrashed. So when Kaido Kaido just sees enough removal, Law, it just becomes an existence that's hard to sustain. Looking at the opposing field, even a Robin is crazy. Because in a Robin deck, normally with Law, you don't have to swing until you're ready to start flipping all your stuff on and off the board. But an unanswered Robin will start wrecking your board. She gets on the board and you need to take her out immediately. Nekomamushi her, swing on her. Nekomamushi her, and then use your other 3 for kill or something. Because this goes sideways and that's popping one of your cards. If the deck is able to keep this on board for multiple turns or amass multiples, you will never keep a healthy board. And that is incredibly scary. Next, you have Okiku, which is better and worse. Okiku doesn't actually destroy the card, but Okiku has a stronger baseline, easier to defend, and it'll start swinging and tapping things, which means it can put pressure on your leader, just like Robin can, but then it taps the card. And so it doesn't even matter if the card, what power the card is, as long as its cost is low enough, it'll tap it, and then they can start swinging on those cards. So this card left unchecked will just tear apart your board as well, and it's easier to defend, pressures the leader harder. This is honestly one of the cards that you have to look out for. Then you move over to cards like Nekomamushi, who can just point and click, tap one of your Lobies, and then the leader and whatever else in their field can swing on it. There are a lot of cards that start picking away at your board. And the thing is that you have to understand is that if you never make a full board with Law, you are playing with a 4-life vanilla leader the entire game that happens to have a bank of very, very, very good cards between two colors. So when you're playing this, not only do you have to be very, very smart about how you sequence, but you also have to hope that there are certain outs your opponent doesn't see. No matter how well you sequence, if your opponent is at, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, if your opponent's at like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 Dawn, right? And they literally just hit you with Nekamamushi, tap that, swing into it with my leader on a kid, and then, you know, Nekamamushi, tap that 2, tap 3, trash 1, swing on that. You just lost 2 cards, and they just put 2 more bodies on the board. You just went from whatever your field was to -2 bodies, and the next turn, there's a plethora of things they can do. You can get straw sorted and have something else killed. You could be lawed, and they could bounce a Nekamamushi to play a Nekamamushi and then swing on something else. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Back-to-back 7-drop kings could end your game literally. Literally just put your game in the trash can. And there's just a lot. Now, blue is bouncing these things, and you know, you don't really want to bounce these things too much, and if you Mihawk a Lobby, you're going to feel bad. But like red with the Robin, as well as the rush that could potentially put you in a danger spot before you can even get off the ground, those are rough. So I feel like outside of blue, most decks have hands and cards they can draw to put you in a very bad position with law. And I don't think that was very much so focused on Japan, but in America, you can see quite often that law is not dominating the game like it did in Japan. And I think that is because in America and global, we're playing a lot of other decks a lot more often, and we're seeing the ways and the lines of play that law can get hindered. So with that being said, I want to know in the comments what you guys think about law. I think law has the highest ceiling of any deck when it goes off, but I just feel like if both players are of equal skill level, it really comes down to the levels of removal that your opponent sees while you're a law player, because you can draw busted broken, but sometimes if you can't get a full board, you just can't get a full board. Like, what are you doing? So that's my take on it. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll be coming back with more One Piece content in the near future. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.